And I completely agree with you, right? That intersection of strategy and leadership is so critical, which leads to, your work on strategic inflection points. So as someone who is a strategy and innovation expert, how did you sort of lead yourself to this work on inflection points, and how do you think about and define them?
So the original work on strategic inflection points that was popular was by Andy Grove back in the 90s. He wrote this fabulous book called Only the Paranoid Survive. And I was intrigued by that idea, and also intrigued by the fact that since then, nobody really picked up on that topic. So that was a starting point. And it crystallized to me with the recognition that strategic inflection points feel when they happen, as though they happened out of the blue overnight. Nothing like this was anticipated. And yet when you really look at them, it's a lot more like the Hemingway phrase, right? How did you go bankrupt? Well, two ways. Gradually and then suddenly, and so too with strategic inflection points. So I define a strategic inflection point as some characteristic, typically in your external environment, that creates a 10x shift in what's possible. So it could be 10x faster, 10x cheaper, 10x better in some way. And that forces you to have to change how you do things, because your systems are all tuned to the old limits. And this new possibility has created a completely new, you can think of it almost like an envelope of constraints that's been lifted now. And you can do things in surprising new ways.
Yeah, and it's all, and like you, influenced by Grove's work, and I love his quote, right? It's that opportunity to either rise to new heights, or it signals the beginning of the end. And in your book, you talk about companies that have done both, those that have been able to spot things early, respond appropriately, and we know of stories of companies where they've not been able to figure that out. So the first step, obviously, is actually even noticing something is happening. And what's your sense? Because you talk about that sometimes our blind spots can get in the way. So as leaders, what do we need to pay attention to make sure we're not missing things or dismissing or marginalizing certain things at the edges that might be happening and critical to our businesses?
I think the most important thing to have as a routine is the ability to get information from what I call the edges of the organization, because the real competitive threat that's existential is not going to come in a wrapped package at the conference center, in that corporate headquarters. It's, the guy on the loading dock that says, well, that's weird. I never saw that brand in here before. Or the person who's off the phone with the customer saying, well, why did they say that Acme Company's product was okay, even though it's much worse than ours? So it's these weak signals that you need to be paying attention to. And I think one of the problems leaders have as they get more senior is they get wrapped in bubble wrap. People get afraid to tell you things. So you need to really create an environment of ruthless candor, where people are not only invited to, but expected to present facts that might be uncomfortable. And you have to get really good at creating environments where that happens on a regular basis. Grove talked about finding helpful Cassandras. And the reality is there's always someone that sees it. Always, in any situation I've studied where there was some catastrophic thing that happened to a company, there are always people. Typically, though, they're not in your strategy group. They're not in the senior leadership team. They're not in positions of power. They're where they're not much being listened to. So your scientists, for example, scientists are really good at saying, well, given the trajectory of how this thing is unfolding, here's where it's likely to be in 5 years. And that could completely upend our business. Or your sales force, or people that are doing customer service. And oftentimes they see it. They're very clear about it. And in fact, they probably talked about it for years. And they at headquarters don't know a thing, right? So how do you get that insight? Because that's where the insights really emerge.